Alright, welcome back to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I am Steven Zuber, and we are -1 Ineos today because of house renovations. So, with us today is, let's start with Jace, because we're all remote and pointing is hard.
Hi, I'm Jace Dickey, and we have with us also...
Hi, it's Fenza.
We did like dramatic hand gestures, but no one can see him. Oh, the joys of
pretend...
remote recording.
Imagine us doing hand gestures a lot.
Yes, just picture them in your
We have
mind.
to do like a old-fashioned radio recording describing what people are doing. Steven, what are we talking about today?
Good question. So today, I think we're going to do a couple of things. I think that it would be... we've definitely got the bandwidth to talk a bit about the protests and all of the awesome and not so awesome stuff that hopefully will come out of this. I wanted to do... mainly we wanted Wes on because, you know, A, you're fucking awesome, and B, I think you had some valuable feedback for the last episode that we did. So I wanted to talk a bit about that and some of the work you did representing Camden whenever we get a chance to shoehorn that in. So
yeah, I'm especially interested in hearing about that because I only heard about that secondhand.
All right, well, let's do it.
Okay.
All right, well, I guess let's see how we want to get started here. Do we want to just jump into... Let's start off easy, since I think we're all still kind of waking up. Let's do... By easy, I guess we'll make you do the work. Since you're in the East time zone, you woke up earlier.
That's true. It's 12:30 here.
That's right. So, let's talk about the work you did representing Camden and what... I mean, I guess bird's eye view, and then we'll deep dive with whatever we want to ask about.
Sure. So I was employed by a law firm that was like overflow for the city of Camden. So they had their own on payroll attorney, and he had an office. But when they got extra work that their office couldn't handle, or something was going to trial and they didn't want to do it, they would give the cases to our firm. So I worked on a number of cases, including there were a couple police excessive force ones, and one of the most interesting ones I worked on was there's been a lot in the news recently about how Camden, a few years ago, disbanded its police force and reconstituted it under the county instead of the city. And I did some work making sure that didn't get overturned in the courts. There was a group of supposedly concerned citizens, in actuality, police union stooges, trying to put forth an initiative petition to let the voters vote on whether to do this, and it was going to be a whole thing, but they managed to. I mean, it's a lot of like kind of boring legal stuff, but essentially the case went to the state Supreme Court, and we got it. So they weren't allowed to place that on the ballot for a lot of actually very good reasons.
And so is having the police under the representation of the county, other than the city, what impact would that really have?
So it's funny because I see all the press around this, and it's like, oh, Camden, you know, they can serve as a model for other jurisdictions who want to improve their policing. And really the point of it at the time that I was aware of, and I wasn't involved in any of the political discussions or anything, but my impression of this was it was basically just union busting. The police union in Camden had too much power, and there was no way to implement things like, they wanted more officers. They wanted to do something about police absenteeism. You know, at the time it was done, about 25% of police were just absent from their jobs every day. But mostly it was about money. The police, through their pay structure, and especially their pensions, it was just costing the city so much. And they were basically able to hire about twice as many officers after this for almost the same amount of money.
So that's rather dramatic.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that kind of turnaround, or like that turnaround in expenses being just overlooked as, I don't know, anything other than flagrant misuse of funds. Like, hey, look, we now have twice the officers for the same amount of money. I can't imagine any other business where that wouldn't be looked upon and be like, what the fuck were we doing before?
Well, I wouldn't call it misuse of funds, but it was definitely police union contracts that were just way too favorable to the officers.
And so, like the other part that jumped out at me, absenteeism, and police are salaried, right?
Yes.
Or no, it's okay, yeah. So they would just not show up to work.
Well, they get overtime.
Yeah,
but
and
they
that's
also
true on any salary job if
yeah.
if it's the right setup. But yeah,
Not my salary job previously.
Yeah, plenty of salary jobs
God.
don't get overtime, but the police did.
yeah. And I guess when I say any, I mean that it can happen in any other industry. It just often doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's almost the opposite problem of like the police being overly policey. They're just not showing up.
Yeah. And it was the exact opposite of defunding the police that people are talking about, because instead what they did was they hired twice as many officers and so they really expanded the police force. And this was just a cost saving way of doing that.
Was there like an
Oh,
inciting
lovely then.
incident that kicked this off?
No, I don't know what it was. It was never really made public. There was no big incident. I think it was just police union negotiations with the city just were not going well, and they were like, well, then if the police union won't agree, then we have to just get rid of the police department.
I mean that as an amateur and not lawyer, that makes sense to me. I want to keep asking a couple more questions specifically related to this, but then I want to dive into that broader subject a bit more. Like you said the people opposing the initiative, aside from the police, were just kind of like stooges.
Yeah.
Not stooges, but you know.
No, I said
You mean, like,
stooges.
Minions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, they were union affiliated people who were doing this because the police union had asked them to, almost certainly.
And what kind of case did they make? Like what was their what did they bring to the table in their favor?
Well, so Camden, under the laws of how it's incorporated, has something called an initiative petition, which allows citizens to place a question on the ballot. And you see this a lot in California state politics, which is probably where you're most familiar with it. There's always propositions over there. In every major election, there's usually one that gets a lot of publicity. But basically, they wanted just to put this question on the ballot, like, should the city of Camden be allowed to disband their police department? And normally you can do that, but the way they worded it was so confusing and weird, and it was...
They always word them. Like, I hate those propositions.
Yeah.
I'm always like, yes or no. I don't know which answer is yes or no.
Yeah, and it was really silly, because the way we won in the state Supreme Court was, by the time it got there, this had already happened. And the wording of their petition was like, should this be allowed to happen? And,
Yeah,
and I'm like, how are people gonna understand what this is if the thing that they're voting on already happened? You'd have to, and they could have just started over with a different petition and said, okay, well, once it happened, we're gonna put a different petition, or
For real this time.
yeah, or do a referendum, which is where the city passes a law, and then they can basically recall that law. They say the city passed this law, we don't like it, we're going to put it on the next ballot to say we're overturning that law and putting it back to where it was. And they could have done either of those routes, but for some reason chose not to. And
I guess for the deliberate obfuscation, would have been 2018, I think, or maybe 2016 here. All the years have blended together. There was a thing in Colorado where, hey, this, it was like, hey, if the value of your property goes down, you get to sue the state and get that property, or get the value of that property back. And I'm like, hey, that sounds great. I just bought a home. If they put a landfill next door and my place gets less valuable, that sounds super awesome. And only to come to learn after election day, or after voting day, whatever, that this was put there by big oil because there was also a fracking bill on the ballot saying you'd have to be some hundreds of meters away from a populated area or something to frack. And what they wanted was like, hey, if we lose the ability to frack in people's backyards, we want to be able to sue the state and get the fracking money back even without having to frack there. And that seemed pretty fracking stupid to me that I only discovered that after the fact. And I said,
was this other proposition put there as like, a red herring or?
I think it was there so that if they couldn't frack in your backyard, they wanted to be able to sue the state and get that money anyway. But it was put to the voters. It was put to the idiot voters like me as, hey, if your property value goes down, not just the people who bought lands to frack on, but if your value goes down, then you get the benefit of being able to sue them, or rather to sue the state and get some of your property value back. And so, having just acquired my first property, I thought that sounded like it made sense. And like I said, in the aftermath, it came out that it was less to do with, of course, it had less to do with the average person than it did with the average, or with the giant corporation funding the bills. So
Yeah.
See, I was hoping that was going in a better way, where they wanted that no one was letting them frack in their backyards, so they wanted to pass a bill where people who allowed that fracking would get paid for the value of their property going down.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Then you'd be like,
I don't know. That might have actually worked out in that favor, as it was the ability to sue the state for loss of value to your property due to a state decision to allow weird shit to happen, like putting a dump or a fracking site in your yard. That didn't end up passing. But the one that said they can frack in your backyard did pass. So.
Oh, good.
Or rather, I think what it was, it wasn't say can they frack in your yard. It was is the distance going to be increased from. I think, like I said, it was like 100
mandatory distance they have to keep.
Yeah, I think it was like 100 meters to like
From
250
residences.
meters or something.
All right. Well,
And it was hilarious because I was talking with people, like family members, who were like, oh no, this, everyone in my neighborhood, they have, jobs in that industry and they need that to keep their, to keep their places. And if they all lose their houses, then my property value goes down anyway. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, just because there's a big field next to your daughter's, will be her elementary school in a couple of years. And you're going to really enjoy driving past 70 semi trucks coming in and out of there every day. While you're dropping her off to and from school. Everything else aside, like, it's going to be super annoying for you, but people, I think, are weirdly short-sighted. I'm also not very well informed on anything, so I'll sound like an idiot on basically every subject when it comes to voting and policy. But let's see if I have any other stuff about the Camden business. I'm kind of working as a surrogate for Inyash, who is busy working on his new house. So what were you going to say, Jace?
I was going to actually ask Wes real quick if you could kind of give us, or give the listeners some background on Camden, New Jersey. I have a certain perspective on Camden, having been from originally the shore. I'm curious, since I think I forget if you were born in the area you're in now, or grew up
I
there?
grew up about an hour and a half away from here in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Camden,
Okay.
for a long time, was the murder capital of the United States.
Yes.
Consistently,
Okay. So we have about this same
Yeah.
impression of
Yeah,
Camden.
it was lots of murders. And I actually live right now about, a mile from Camden. And ever since they did this, the murder rate's gone way down, the violent crime rate's gone way down. So it's just, bad, not the absolute worst.
I mean, it sounds better if if your odds of getting killed on your way to work are lower. That sounds like a big boon. But of course, that's, since your odds of being killed in any case are probably very small, even in the murder capital of the U.S., I imagine the other deficits probably weigh in still.
Yeah, and the way murders tend to happen is they're concentrated by neighborhood. So there's just, certain places you don't go to after dark.
Right.
Yeah, there's also this amazing aquarium, which is the main reason I've ever been to Camden.
Yeah, the Camden Aquarium's very nice. Their whole waterfront area is pretty neat.
I remember going there with my grandmother a few years back when I was still living in New Jersey, and I was using a Garmin instead of my Google Maps, and it was taking me some back road, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh yeah,
oh,
that's
no.
bad.
You can feel it. There's just a different vibe when you've gone off the touristy, family-friendly.
Yeah,
path.
I once biked over the bridge to Philly that's in there, and it had me bike through Camden, and it was a little scary.
Yeah. Although the impression I get is that it tends to be more I don't know if gang violence is correct, but kind of just interpersonal dispute.
People killing people they know
violence.
generally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
I don't know.
reasons. not just randomly killing tourists. Although, maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, people. I would. My guess is the improvements in the violent crime rate and everything are because there's twice as many cops now.
I wonder also if, maybe oh my god, Steven's head just disappeared.
Whoops. Let's ignore that. Keep going.
Okay. For context, we're on Skype, and Skype has this feature where you can have like a AR background inserted behind you. Steven's doing it. It's been pretty good so far, but there was this point early on in the podcast where I was just trying to keep a straight face. But you apparently have a mug that says "Don't be a dick."
Oh, yeah.
You like lifted it to drink it at one point, but I just saw the words "Don't be a dick" kind of appear from the clouds behind you. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Yeah,
well,
that's
we'll push past all the fun
totally,
stuff that people can't see.
Well, that mug
Right.
will be relevant
I was
to our
asking a
conversation
question.
later.
I got very distracted by your headlessness. Bring it back. I was trying to ask Wes, do you have any insight on whether the number of cops increasing had to do with the drop in the crime rates, or did the quality of the policing actually go up once they disbanded the union?
I mean,
Like, what was the hiring process like?
I
after that?
have very little insight into that. My understanding is that both happened, and because when they made the new police force, I believe it was the same chief of police, but everyone had to reapply for their jobs, and not everyone got them.
Okay, good.
And there was a whole
Good.
process. So the Camden County Metro Police, which is the new police force, apparently also has one of the best use of force policies in the country. They worked with the New Jersey ACLU to put it together. Yeah. And that actually can be a model for other police departments. And I've been looking into. I actually just got a hold of the use of force policy for my town's local police, because I know some local activists here, and we were going to look and see if there's improvements to be made. It's actually quite good. I think it has almost everything on the 8 Can't Wait campaign's demands already, except for the one about firing warning shots. But I actually hear that that's not a very good idea.
I mean, warning shots of actual bullets or those pepper spray ones?
From what I could tell, they're saying before you shoot someone with a gun, you need to fire a warning shot. And
I mean, in principle, that sounds great if they're standing nicely in an empty field. I think that this gets us closer to the nationwide police stuff, but like.
There's nowhere to safely shoot a warning shot anymore. Even if you shoot directly overhead, you're going to hit like an airplane.
I mean, or your bullet's going to fall down somewhere.
Yeah, I think an arcing bullet can land pretty hard. I think straight up they tend to fall at about their terminal velocity, which isn't really hard enough to hurt people. But like if someone was causing shit in my townhome community or something, and they fired a warning shot over the person's head, they would just hit another person's window. And so if they, in the rare circumstance where someone had to be put down by the police in my parking lot, I'd rather them fire every bullet into the crazy person that is brandishing a weapon at them or something. Again, there isn't the number of people I think that are actually shot don't. I mean, this is so trivial as to not be worth saying, but the number of people who yes, I agree with that use of force. The number of people who fall in that category are so small that I think the odds of that ever happening near me are vanishingly small. But the idea of like, oh no, we got to fire a warning shot over their head or something, that would hit somebody else's house.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of windows.
Our policy actually specifically forbids warning shots.
Okay. Probably for good reason, yeah. I mean, another thing about New Jersey in general, maybe Camden specifically, is the population density is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I forget what the numbers are, but
it's very dense out here.
It's very dense.
Let's see if when I hear, oh yeah, we doubled the size of our police force, that sounds like almost a bad thing, especially given today's climate. But it sounds like it's actually worked out really well.
Yeah.
So like the problem isn't the number of police; it's the
funding. It sounds like,
and the unchecked everything. If if I mean, imagine any other line of work where you fuck up, and you get to do a self-investigation into whether or not you fucked up, and no one else gets to look at your internal investigation. Of course, especially if you're tight with all your coworkers, you're always going to turn out to have not fucked up,
Yeah. And
right? So I think that's the other big weakness that comes out of having these really tight unions.
Yeah, and we talked about this on the Mind Killer. But the main problem is qualified immunity. Is police, it's really hard to hold them accountable, both because of their union contracts often include a lot of protections that normal suspects don't get. And also the courts will give them what's called qualified immunity, which means that for them to be held accountable for violating someone's civil rights, there has to be generally some court case on point about the specific thing that they did, so they know that it was actually a violation of your rights.
And when they say specific, they mean damn specific. I forget if it was whatever late show, either John Oliver or Seth Meyers or one of those, but the example they used was like, oh yeah, being shot in a low creek is different than being shot in like a riverbed in the woods or something, even though they're both in the woods. And it's like, oh yeah, nope, those weren't the exact same geological surrounding features, so they're different enough. You have qualified immunity because this situation has never happened
Yeah,
before.
I don't think it's not quite as extreme as people make it out to be, but it's hard to convict an officer.
And I think that sounds like it's probably part of the problem. And I'm not sure if this is a question that any of us are equipped to solve or to answer. But one solution I heard that I liked would be, again at face value, without understanding everything involved, was, all right, well let's make every, whether it be precinct or individual union or whatever it is, if unions are going to stick around, or maybe every city's police force all carry like a packet of insurance for the officers, so that when you sue for wrongful whatever, you're suing that officer. You're not suing the city, and then it comes out of their insurance premiums, just like it comes out of a doctor's malpractice. But the difference of making it a group policy rather than an individual policy is that then other officers would be incentivized to kick bad officers out, rather than protect them and shelter them, like, moving a diddling priest from one church to the next. They would be like, no, you keep hitting people, and it's costing me more money. And if it costs someone, to put it cynically, like Professor Quirrell, I'm not so much annoyed that you keep pulling people out of their cars and hitting them. I'm more annoyed that it's costing me $50 a month that you keep doing that. So that sort of motivation might actually get people to act.
Yeah, it would be. I think it would probably be helpful to require officers individually to carry their own insurance. The way plumbers do, the way other tradespeople do. Yeah, I think that'd probably be a good idea, if a little politically infeasible.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of these are politically infeasible.
Yeah.
This one was different than just individual
maybe not
insurance.
so much now.
And it was a group policy. And so then that way, like, if, the three of us had insurance for us, for our little trio, and we were out doing whatever, and, I kept going out and hitting people, your guys' premiums would go up too. And then that way you'd be really inclined to say, let's get Steven the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Or should at least, so for whatever reason, some officer was totally fine paying higher premiums because he liked hitting people enough to do it, then that wouldn't solve the problem for him. But it would solve the problem for a lot of other people. Most people don't want to spend increased amounts on their premiums. I'm not sure how much it would go up after a successful lawsuit, but probably some.
And I think the thing that probably would make that feasible is how heavily unionized the police departments are. Because normally you can't tell someone, to work here, you have to have insurance. Although, I'm a lawyer. When I worked for a law firm, I didn't have my own malpractice insurance. The law firm had malpractice insurance that I was covered under. Now that I'm solo, I have my own. I think doctors, though, do tend to have their own malpractice insurance.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, you mentioned tradespeople, like plumbers. Like, I know that they do have, like, plumbers unions.
Yeah, well, tradespeople generally are not employees of anyone, so they have to insure themselves, and usually do it through their unions. And the police could do something similar.
That would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
I actually wonder if anywhere currently uses that model.
Because then you get, and that would have the added incentive of getting the union incentivized to reduce excessive force complaints.
That's always my thing, is that like it'd be one thing. I forget where I saw this analogy, but I just loved it. You know, it's the difference in behavior you see between like your average school district, your public school district that discovers, you know, a pedophile assaulting children, and then, you know, the caricature of a parish that finds one of its priests assaulting children, and the, you know, and not in every case obviously, but in enough to hit the news every year. You know, the parish will just move the offending priest to a different location, and they get to keep their job, they get to keep doing their thing, and they get to keep assaulting kids. Whereas, like in a public school,
And they keep their reputation as well. Like,
right?
they are incentivized to also hush it up.
Well, but the thing is, like if a school discovers it, they say, "Holy shit, we can't believe this was happening. This guy, he's getting the fuck out of here." And and it's, you know, more of a public thing, and it's handled because there's less of a, like, I don't know, us them mentality maybe. Like they also just don't want that shit in their house, so they get these people out, and that like the use of force and the abuse of force in cases of police violence seem to fall closer to like the church model than to the school model, where, you know, somebody is doing some egregious shit, and, you know, like oh geez, I'm blanking on her last name, Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor.
Thank you. I don't know why I was thinking Johnson. Her police report just came out earlier this week, and it's like blank. She apparently had no injuries. There was no forced entry, according to the official sheet. But according to the reports of like what we did when we got there, and of course the surviving victims report, none of it's true. And so, like the bullshit kind of involvement of like, oh yeah, let's just hush this and try and, you know, again, if this is our own internal investigation, all it takes is me to push this up to my senior officer and be like, this looked good, and they say, that looks good, cool, investigation complete. But because this case has a spotlight on it, that's not going to fly. Although, of course, I think her murderers are still employed, so that's rather discouraging.
Yeah, moving internal affairs out of the police department would almost certainly be a good idea. It should be a completely civilian thing, and I don't know how they've gotten away with having that as part of the police department for this long.
Yeah, it seems like fucking madness.
I kind of want to go back and highlight something Steven was talking about, where you were saying, like, you don't understand why there's different procedures with churches and pedophilia versus schools. And I was kind of, I think it has to do with authority, and possibly that's what's going on with the police too. There's like just the weird kind of social interactions people have with authority figures, and what institutions are considered to be authority figures versus not. Like a school can be bullied around by the parents of children, whereas like churches, depending on the church, but like they are pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's definitely
like they're not
probably
run
a
by.
component
There's
to
not
it.
a church board like there's a school board.
Yeah, that's a
They're
good
not.
point.
They're tax exempt. Like they're not, you know, funded the same way public schools are. They're not held accountable that way. So there's not as many parallels with police, but I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing an idea here.
I think that, I mean, that definitely sounds like a part of it. I think it's just also the internal attitude of like, we're going to protect our own no matter what. I just don't think that exists among teachers. Like, it, you know, I wouldn't want to work
I
down
could
the hall.
easily imagine it though. Like it seems like the kind of institution where that, like that, there is like things like tenure, and there gets to be weirdness around nepotism, or there's a word for nepotism that I'm blanking on, but like maybe it is just nepotism. I don't know, where you promote or protect friends,
Cronyism.
family members, etc. Cronyism, yeah, I think that's a better word.
Well, so,
Definitely that happens.
but I think,
more so at colleges though.
yeah, but I think there is a huge difference between just the culture of teachers and the culture of police. Like my mom was a teacher, and if she knew of another teacher that was endangering their students, she definitely would have said something. There's no question.
Which is weird because you think cops would also have that kind of honor and duty and whatever they.
Well, they don't.
Yeah, it just turns out that they don't. And
upsetting.
that's the disappointing and interesting factor. Like there was a period of a few years when I was a kid that I wanted to be a police officer because I grew up watching superhero shows, and that was the closest thing we had. Was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
this is the protector class of the citizen. I think this sounds great. I went through like the youth police academy, and all the cops there I met seemed chill. It was
Was this in Denver
no, this is in Fort Collins.
or
So
Colorado?
it was in
generally?
Colorado,
Yeah.
but it was not a major city. It was I mean, they have a university, population
I was gonna say like
120,000, but not a population of 1 million. Like
the police here seem like shockingly demilitarized compared to my experiences with police on the East Coast,
well, thank goodness for that.
and also just like cool. Like I've spoken to police officers, and they were just like, "Hello, citizen." I was just, "What? You're not trying to like intimidate me?"
And I mean, that's the thing that I think many people have had encounters with the police that the cop was chill as fuck, and I think there's different kinds of cops, and this is where I was on the fence for a couple of years about like, no, this is a problem with a few bad eggs, and the opposition argument being no, this is a systemic problem with all of them.
Systemic, yeah.
And I was finally sold over to the systemic problem with the argument that look, if this wasn't a systemic issue, then the bad cops would be forced out by the good cops, but that's just never what happens. As it is, the good cops actually end up getting fired or being forced to issue
Yeah.
apologies. There was that woman last week, police officer that stopped another officer from a chokehold, and she got fired. The couple of officers who were kneeling with protesters had to issue public apologies for kneeling, not for anything that the police force did that the people were protesting against. The like there's a handful of cops that are like I think the mentality is like, well, it pays $10 more than the post office and I get a gun. Like this is just a chill job, and it comes with benefits. And I think that there's certainly that kind of cop. And then of course, at least as early back as like 2005, the FBI was issuing warnings that like, oh yeah, this is a concerted effort among white nationalists and neo-Nazis to infiltrate the police force, that apparently no one listened to. So like the way that I was trying to phrase it to a skeptic about this issue was because they are now where I was a few years ago of saying it's just a few bad cops, and I'm like, well, I think that as a whole there's to put it mildly, a bullying problem within the police force, and that isn't a norm that the rest of the force shits down or tries to shoot down, and that's the real problem.
Bullying seems really accurate, actually, because you can think of the social dynamics of bullies in schools, and I almost feel like the kinds of like mitigation tactics that you can employ. I don't know. I'm thinking about schools right now, and I'm thinking about the bullshit like anti-bullying stuff that schools tried when I was a kid. That was just completely like, having assemblies where like they get the whole school together and they have some like Wes is laughing. You remember this? Some public speaker talk about like how bad bullying is. That like they had performing arts students do a skit about bullying, and it was just it like made you want to go bully someone afterwards. Like the same thing with like the Dare to Resist Drugs and Violence. Like I swear to God, I like left those assemblies wanting to do drugs.
Nothing
It's just
nothing made me want to do
get the
things
flavor out of my mouth.
more than authority figures telling me not to.
Yeah.
Especially them telling you in a way that just didn't sell it at all.
Yeah.
It's like a person in a dog suit skateboarding in and being like, "Hey, kids,
Wow.
going home early and doing your homework is cool. Don't do drugs. There's a free roller."
Always do what adults
Like-
tell you.
I guess
Just
related
this, like,
back to
transparent. Yeah,
to the-
sorry. No.
oh no, you're good. It is funny, and it my main thing with the school assembly thing was that like just the level of dishonesty. If they come out and they'll say things like, oh yes, all drugs are the same and they all are the worst, and here's your brain on pot,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it looks like a fried egg or whatever, and it's like then somebody tries pot because it's super available, and they're like, oh, it wasn't nearly as bad as the authority figures told me to be. I bet that cocaine and heroin aren't nearly as bad as they told me that it would be either, because they all said it was the same. When in fact there is a difference between some of the more intense drugs and some of the less intense drugs, but because they're all sold to you from your your DARE program as being the same level of bad, then the second you falsify that broad claim, you're skeptical of the rest of it. I did want to ask Wes if you know what happened. You said there were some problem police officers that kind of were involved with the Camden case. Do you know if anything happened to them? You said some people like reapplied and didn't get their jobs.
Yeah,
I doubt
no,
you've got like.
I don't know any specifics. I just know that like not everyone who was a Camden cop became a Camden County cop, and I think some of that was probably done intentionally to get rid of some problem people. But that's just really just
Nice.
speculation.
Do you know, without unless you actually have numbers, but do you know if incidences of like police brutality and overuse of force went down after the size of the police force doubled and the union was disbanded?
I believe so. Not from any insider information, but I think I read that recently.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I mean, do you have? I mean, there's probably not much that any individual one of us can do, but any way that this could be sort of generalized for any other city or any other group that wants to try and get this sort of thing through, like.
My recommendation is to look at the Camden Police use of force policy and design a similar one.
Cool.
It's very de-escalation heavy.
Well, that sounds. I mean, God, it sounds so mind-bendingly obvious that I'm
Yeah.
putting a hand to my face.
Also,
like,
no warrior training. Do not allow cops to be trained by these assholes who tell them that they're soldiers on a hostile battlefield.
right. You need to be prepared to take a life and this
Yeah.
and that. And it's like, yeah.
If you train cops to de-escalate, they de-escalate. If you train cops to shoot people, they'll shoot people.
So who'd have thought the training actually matters and
Right.
works?
Yeah, well, even I was gonna say also just like norms, and they have kind of a apprenticeship sort of system, right? Like it's not that the way they pair cops up with partners or the way that they kind of escalate the career path. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's like a role model cops who are the older, superior ones that you look up to, right? And if there's this norm of we are like people that protect the peace and de-escalate fights and whatnot, then newer, younger people joining the police force kind of get on board with that, right?
I mean, I don't know how that works, but I'm certain that when new hires respond to the existing culture. So if the existing culture is, has this warrior mentality, then they're going to adopt it. If it has a less aggressive mentality, then they'll adopt that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And replacing all of the previous culture seems like a good way to maybe remove bad norms and insert some better ones.
Yeah,
Question
but
marks.
you have to start with the written policies. If
Yeah,
your
that makes sense.
if your written policy is like if you feel threatened, shoot, then you can't. There's no way to change the more subtle things.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any more to like talk about your personal role in those cases, or I guess are you able to talk?
Well, so one of the things,
Details, or is it kind of
so one of the things that I think people don't realize when it comes to complaints of police brutality is that it's not just the cops who lie. People are completely full of shit all the time about complaints of police brutality. And just from like the small handful of cases I was involved in, there was so many obvious lies told.
How much of your job is just that? By
Oh,
the way?
not much. I really only had like a.
Oh, really?
Well, a lot of it was for Camden, but a small amount was for police brutality complaints. I think I only had 2.
That kind of meant
total,
like
or 3.
in your career as a lawyer.
Oh, even.
How much of it is kind of just everybody's lying right now, and you're just sitting there, kind of with your head in your hands, like, yeah.
Well, so I do mostly family law now, which is less
Right.
lying and more just everyone sort of exaggerating and focusing on their, emotional
Catastrophizing.
pain over the actual facts of what happened.
Man, I don't know if I'd want to do police brutality cases or family law cases if I was a lawyer, just because they both sound like they'd be equally shitty from different directions.
Well, family's way
I
better.
remember reading. Well, that's good, and I imagine that I mean, I was being somewhat tongue in cheek, but I remember reading a case. Someone on Reddit was like a family or a divorce attorney, which is different than family law, but it was
It's
adjacent.
not
and
different from
it
family
was-
law.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't know if family law was more broad or something than just
It
divorces.
is,
mostly
but I mean,
divorce and
people,
custody, right?
divorce attorneys almost always do, you know, that sort of family law stuff ancillary to divorce.
Okay. Yeah, it was just like they were talking about how they had this couple and they spent $16,000 in lawyer fees arguing about who gets ownership of this turkey baster. And it's like, and both of the lawyers even offered to buy their clients new turkey basters, for $15 or whatever these things cost. And they were like, no, I want this one. And like that,
I mean,
that sort of
my
pettiness.
No,
turkey
no. The question
baster.
is, what were they doing with that turkey baster?
One can hope basting turkeys, but one is now forced to think of all the alternative uses of it. So thank you.
I mean, if you were to pay $16,000 to have it, that's I feel like you were doing more than basting turkeys with it.
It could be, or you're just being crazy petty.
Also, always.
Yeah, I
not.
mean,
Yeah, because like you can buy sex toys for really nice ones are like a few $100. Just saying.
do they make them like that?
Oh, I don't know about turkey baster ones, but I'm just thinking of like Fun Factory, like high quality German
Oh, sure.
sex
I'm sure there's a
toys are,
Tiffany
like,
brand
a
turkey
few
baster out there that's studded with diamonds and shit. So
I
Diamond
want to look
encrusted
up.
turkey
No, I
baster.
do. Do I want to look up German
You really
turkey
don't.
basters? I think I do.
all
I have a
right,
morbid curiosity.
we'll hold off, and that can be our extracurricular stuff for the episode. I think that we're getting tied in. This has been sort of a smaller case of the broader things going on in the last couple of weeks in the U.S. It kind of to paint the scene. I was telling a family member that we had a listener from my other podcast, the We Want More one, write in from Australia, and it opened with like this nice sentiment of like, hey, hope you guys are doing well. We're just saw that you
Hey,
guys passed.
Americans, are you okay?
That's basically, and it was nicely put. It was just like, I saw that you guys just passed 100,000 deaths and from COVID, and now we're seeing all the stuff in the news from all the police brutality. Certainly hope you and Brian are staying safe, and luckily the solution to both of those is like, yeah, we both stay home all the time. But it was like the image from the outside is like, oh yeah, shit's terrible here, and the image from the inside is that shit's pretty terrible here. I've got a coworker who's going to a lot of protests in Detroit and getting pepper sprayed and getting her ass whooped a couple times a week, which I don't quite like. I don't know. I don't know if I haven't said this on a podcast yet, but I've had this in a couple private conversations. Like, I'm not doing anything like actively in the protests, even though I support them. And part of that is because like I feel like if I like one good shove to the ground would have me limping for 2 years, and like I don't want to risk my physical safety. That could be interpreted as a oh well, Steven doesn't really care, that's why he's not acting on it. And it's not really that. It's just that I guess I am I don't think unreasonably selfishly putting my own safety above my solidarity with my fellow man and my fellow human. And
Yeah, there's many ways to support protest too. We're currently like on air, I guess. And the kind of people that I don't know, I also like really admire and like for a while aspired to be the kind of person that would show up to a protest and willingly be beat up or maced or thrown in jail to support a cause. And maybe I will do that someday, but it's just like you have to be a special kind of person to be able to do that shit. And like I feel like it's the same kind of person that would like throw themselves in front of a bus to save a child, or like I don't even know. Like those people are awesome, and also they're like not the norm. And there's a good reason for that, because if everybody did those kinds of things, people would just be dying left and right all the time. We have a self-protection and survival instinct for a reason as a species. I don't know. I guess that gets into deeper questions about ethics and morality that are beyond the scope of this podcast.
or are they? Well, they can be.
Or this episode of the podcast.
That works. Yeah, I think my only other real thought on it was, because Wes is on, I have to think something somewhat mind-killery, and my hot take, if you can call it that, was there's at least a handful of people, one I'm thinking of in particular, whom I hold in some esteem and respect, and they were talking about how as a white man I could never understand what it's like to be, and of course this part's true, I could never understand what it's like to be a black person constantly on guard from the police, but they had said something to the effect of like, police brutality isn't a problem I face as a white guy. And my only hot take on that is like I think you might be in for a rude awakening. Like yes, the police brutality is disproportionately targeted at black people, but it's not exclusively targeted towards black people. And if you think that you're immune from being attacked by the police just because you're white, I think you might be in for a terribly rude awakening. It's this isn't just a problem that only the minority of people face. This is a problem that everybody faces. And again, yes, it's targeted disproportionately towards minorities, but it's not like, I guess you're not safe just because you're white. And if someone's saying, well, it's not my problem, well, it kind of is. And this person wasn't saying it wasn't their problem. They had the solidarity attitude, which I agree with, which is, no, this is everyone's problem, but it's not one that I'm dealing with. And it's like, well, I guess, so my hot take in a nutshell is like, this is sort of a problem that you could deal with if you bumped into the wrong cop. What was it, just a couple of years, it all blends together, and I forget the guy's name, but, you just Google all the high-profile people who got killed by the police in the last couple of years, and there was that guy, now I'm blanking on the details and thinking of another one. Anyway, there was
one of those many black guys that got killed by cops.
Actually, no, these were both white people.
Who can remember all of them? Okay.
Yeah, so but this guy had a name and it hit national news, but it wasn't as big of an incident. I'll see if I can dig up the name later, maybe. But another case I'm thinking of, and this just is more about training. It was somebody who it was somebody with mental a developmental disorder, and they went and saw, oh shoot, it was one of those space movies that came out the last 5 years. I forget what it was. Anyway, so they enjoyed the movie. They saw it at the movie theater, and they just stayed in their seat because they wanted to watch it again. And 3 cops show up, and they choke the kid out, and he dies in the movie theater. And his last words were like, "Mom, it hurts," and it's devastating. And this was a white person with developmental disorder or developmental problems.
Yeah.
And
See,
so
that's,
so yes, they also fit into a minority group where the police aren't able apparently to talk with somebody who can't perfectly reason back with them, but they also can. Excuse me.
No, they can try.
No. Well,
I have a chip on my shoulder about this because when I worked at the library in New Jersey before I moved here, libraries are one of the places that homeless people and people with developmental disabilities and physical disabilities and elderly people with dementia, it's a place where you can go for free that has bathrooms and Wi-Fi and air conditioning / heating, We see this in Denver a lot too, where a lot of homeless people hang out by the library. And I had so many incidences of people that I knew from the library, and I was just like, I don't know, fucking John who comes into the library every day to download anime. And just the sweetest person, just, I don't know, 30-something-year-old. I'm blending together a few identities and changing names, but maybe 30-something-year-old dude who just comes into the library, chats with people, watches anime, and has autism, and sometimes just has sensory processing things and freaks out. And by freaks out, I mean yells loudly, waves arms, does weird things. So run into John, for example, in ShopRite or whatever, and if people don't know John, then immediately they'll call the cops, and they're like, oh man, there's a 30-something big scary male in here waving their arms around, yelling, and the cops will show up ready to go, and it's just you have to I've actually confronted the cops and been like, no, I know this person, this is John from the library, and he's just very upset because he touched ice, and if you talk to him for 2 seconds, he will tell you, I don't like the ice, it feels bad, that's why I'm upset. And then he'll calm down once he feels understood and safe,
Yeah.
Sorry that I'm kind of going on a rant about this. It's just a issue.
No.
Heart.
I totally understand, and I think I misspoke when I said that they can talk. The people can reason back. I think I hadn't quite finished my thought on it. Was that even if they can,
sorry.
The police are often. Oh no, you're good. I wasn't making my point very succinctly. That there's too many cases where, and the person I'm thinking of, it might jog someone's memory if they could remember the name. I seem to remember he was on the ground with guns pointed at him from multiple officers and was being shouted inconsistent commands. Get on your knees, put your hands behind your head or something, and
being shouted twister commands.
What was that?
Like the instructions for the game Twister.
Yeah, basically, except for trying to
Am
be
I
told to
dating
do two
myself?
things that you physically
People
can't
still play
do, and
Twister.
so it just went, kind of back and forth on that. So I don't know. It's wild, and I can't find. I was digging around a little bit for the source of the thing I was thinking of, and it's not coming to mind. So anyway, I don't have much else to add other than kind of raising the subject of what's currently going on in our culture's climate regarding that issue. I don't know. I just guess to ping the ball out to you guys if there's anything you wanted to talk about, but I figured we couldn't talk about an isolated incident of like police stuff and not talk about the broader stuff. So
Yeah, no, I'm good. My, as another plug, listen to the Mind Killer if you want to hear my full thoughts on the broader issue.
If you want to hear about that good culture war / political / economics.
yeah, that sounds good to me. All right, yeah, do check out the Mind. I don't know if anyone's
Angle.
unaware of Mind Killer, but if they are, you guys shouldn't be, and go check it out. The first few episodes are on this feed, and the rest you can find by going to your favorite podcast app and typing in the Mind Killer. So let's see, what else do we want to talk about then, guys? I guess we were talking a bit about the different kind of ways to approach community building and cultures or among communities that we've developed ourselves.
Yeah.
So like,
So,
yeah,
The niceness topic, you mean?
yeah. If we're wrapped up with this one,
let's all be nice to people all the time. Yeah, no, I had some feedback from the last episode, which, I saying everyone be nice is certainly a good starting point, but I think it is not. It is. I don't like telling everyone to be nice because I don't think you can. If everyone's nice, I don't think it creates the kind of community that I like, and I don't think it creates the kind of community that you guys want. Really, I think in order to have a community that's having vibrant discussions and especially having a community where people get called on their bullshit, you can't just have everyone be nice all the time. So
I agree with you there. I think maybe we should get away with any ambiguity with the word nice. I mean, so like we mentioned before, my mug of "Don't be a dick" is what it says on it. So presumably, when you say not everyone be nice all the time, you don't mean everyone should be dicks all the time,
Yeah.
which is the other end of the spectrum.
everyone should not be dicks
So
all the
if
time.
we do away with the word exactly, so I think doing away with the word nice, let's try and hash out what if any. I suspect there's very little daylight between our actual positions here, because I think like
Because Annie Ashle's not here.
well, I think even if he was, I would be surprised if he would push back too much on saying no we should. I guess so. When you say when
far too nice
you
for
hear
that.
what was that?
Sorry, I'm being a troll. I said he would be too nice to do that.
When you hear we should all be nice all the time, what are you hearing without using the word
So-
nice?
Did you guys read the Unit of Caring back when she was posting regularly on her Tumblr?
I know Inyash did, and I haven't.
So
or I believe
I was
Inyash
gonna say
did.
I've read some of it, and I know that it was like Annie Ash's favorite blog
yeah, it's
for a bit.
Kelsey Piper wrote a Tumblr called the Unit of Caring. He still does every once in a while. But when she used to post, a big theme of her Tumblr was that when you have conflicts about social norms, it's best to look at it in a competing needs framework, which is that like different people have different needs from a social space, and that those needs are often in tension with each other. And that's when you ask like what should the social norms here be, you should be asking yourself like, okay, who needs what here and which norms serve those needs, and
Which norms?
yeah, what norms serve what needs. And
Okay, in like the sense of a small community like ours having kind of the founder effect's ability to create norms, as opposed to having them kind of evolve, I guess.
Right. Well, I think, if you're talking about the Discord server, the norms there have evolved
Yeah.
pretty naturally. And one of the things that made me nervous about last episode was it sounded like there may be some effort to consciously change what the norms are.
I think we agreed not to do that, mostly because we didn't think that it was possible. And I think also I was the one suggesting that, and that, again, I was mostly kind of just throwing ideas out there for... I like to, I don't know, pick an extreme position, see how people respond to it, kind of, and then pull back from it until,
Gotcha. Well, when
I
I
don't
so
know.
when I hear people
triangulate.
So when I hear people talk about being nice, what I'm picturing is being the perfect internet citizen. And the perfect internet citizen is always civil, always polite, never takes anything personally, never insults anyone else, and never says anything that another person would be offended by.
So kind
That's
of
a
the
lot of
Spock
ands.
rationalist.
Sort of what?
And that last one's
Sorry, Jace, what'd you say?
I was talking about the... Is this a TV tropes thing, or was this from the atheist movement? There was this discussion about rationality being like, there's this caricature of a Spock figure who just is all logic and
No, I'm not
emotions.
really talking about that. I'm talking more about a very empathic person who is always like, when I say never says anything that would offend somebody else, I feel like the Straw Vulcan says those kind of things all the time. What the perfect internet,
Vulcan, that was the word I was
what
trying
the
to think of.
perfect internet citizen says is, always very polite and very warm and empathetic, and never angry, never upset. Gets emotional, about injustice, but never about anything that someone said to them. I'm sorry.
Well,
So the perfect internet citizen, I think, is something most of us know how to do. Like, we can play that role
Or aspire towards.
and we sort of have to in most spaces online. There are, I'm a member of tons of Facebook groups, a number of other Discord servers, and just a whole bunch of other places around the internet that I feel very strong pressure to be the perfect internet citizen, and never say anything too controversial, never take anything personally, never get, never fight with anybody, never react when I feel offended, that sort of thing. And one of the things I like about the Bayesian Conspiracy Discord is it's a place where I don't feel like I have to do that. It's a place where I feel like I can be an actual person, and express my actual thoughts and my actual feelings without having to be constantly glancing over my shoulder for the internet police, or what did Ineash call them, the local scold, to come and be like, hey, you're not being nice enough. Like, and I think it's really hard to talk about these things in the abstract, because my so I'm autistic, so like a lot of how I interact with people is I have like lists of rules for like, this is how social interaction goes best, and a lot of those
you do it out on manual.
Yeah, and a lot of those are very fact specific.
That's how I think of it.
But the last fight I was in on the Discord was because someone called me a liar, and I was offended, and I reacted angrily. And, the perfect internet citizen never would have done that. The perfect internet citizen would have been like, I understand what you are saying. Here, let me calmly explain to you my thought process here. And that certainly would have gone better. That's the thing about being the perfect internet citizen. It's actually good to do. But it also means you can't be a person, and you can't have emotions, and you can't express those emotions.
Yeah, and that's like exhausting. I actually am impressed by your ability. I know we've had a lot of like off-air conversations about introversion versus extroversion, but I just don't exist on the internet mostly. I lurk in communities, or like, even in our Discord. I've mentioned a few times. I lurk in our Discord. I'm watching all y'all. I rarely interact. mostly because of the thing you're talking about. I just don't want to have to worry about my internet reputation. I'm stressed out enough about my real life reputation, like my in person social interactions. And it's hard, yeah, as a fellow autistic person. I mean, I am also doing all of this on manual, and I have my lists of rules that I'm checking internally, externally sometimes. It's too much to really keep track of, and if I don't have that ability to have that the sort of radical honesty thing that I prefer, where it's I make it sound like it's like an ethical choice of mine or something, but honestly, I do radical honesty because I can't do the other thing. I suck at lying and keeping secrets. I know this ever since I was a little kid. It would be like little Jace, did you take the $5 from my purse? And I'd be like, haha, no. Yeah, I did it. Oh my god, punish me. I'm bad. Like, it's just, I can't. I can't lie. I feel horrible, and it's just, it will be in the back of my mind, like the little voice screaming at you, like, no, things are wrong. You must fix this.
Yeah.
And then, like, keeping secrets as well, which is,
Uh,
I just kind of tell people, when I meet them, I'm like, hey, like, if you ever have something that you want me to keep a secret from someone, probably just, like, don't tell it to me, because I will just blurt it out without realizing it until it's too late. And sorry, I just don't track those things good.
well, so
And I think that part's like, I'm trying to order my thoughts here. Your list of all the things of a perfect internet citizen sounds like it'd be great if everyone was doing that all the time. If you're the only person doing that, and you're in a room of 30 other people, you're going to be you're going to be pushed around. You're going to be the only one having to bottle up your feelings because everyone else is freely expressing themselves. That all sounds fucking terrible. And I think it's worth, I'm totally fine going on the record as saying that I'm on a number of Discord servers, and among my favorites is the Bayesian conspiracy one. I have seen how arguments can, they're self-contained. People, and it's rare too, being called a liar is about the closest I've seen to like a personal attack. And that is a personal attack, but that's like the only variety of it. I've been on other ones where even just this week I've seen people, within, I don't know, 9 or 10 messages run straight to Godwin's Law and start invoking Hitler and Nazis. And it's,
Oh, God.
I don't think I've ever seen an unapt analogy involving Nazis come up on the Bayesian Conspiracy Discord. In the event that it ever comes up, which I can't even think of an example, I think that it was a good example of an actually decent parallel or something. So to be clear, I think that our community has, by our community I mean the Bayesian Conspiracy Discord, not the rationalist community as a whole. I think it has tons of strengths, and what I really like about it is that it is self-policing, and that it doesn't need moderation. The closest I've ever had to come to do moderation is saying, someone posts a spoiler in the non-spoiler "we want more" channel, and I'd be like, can you move that to the spoiler one?
Yeah.
And like, that's the level of moderation that I want to do.
but then again, you gave everyone the ability to delete those, so it really is self-policing.
Exactly. And no one's abused that. If some asshole wanted to, they could run through and delete the whole thing, and they haven't yet.
Maybe
the benefit
David's
of
right.
the benefit of me doing it David would be right if we were all playing with the same norms and approaches, but society at large isn't. Society at large
We need to get David on now.
Well, yeah, we will at some point, but I think society at large would have the issue of, somebody would have no trouble just running in and wrecking shit because everyone's got a key, right? I think that being able to respond emotionally to something that charges you emotionally is super valuable, and is what I would do. I've responded emotionally, and there are times where I haven't. Most of the negative feedback that comes my way, or negative stuff that comes my way, is people shitting on one or more of my podcasts. And like, I think maybe once have I said, like, you know what, go make your own oh no, this actually wasn't even on the Discord. It was on a comment on the website, actually. And they just sat there and like ripped apart the thing, and I'm like, you know what, like, if you hate it so much, why are you listening to this? And why don't you go make your own podcast? It sounds like a great idea. I'll listen to that one. As far as if I'm making shit, constructive feedback, welcome. Unconstructive feedback, go fuck yourself. And that's so. I mean, if I wouldn't want to coordinate in a society or in a community like our Discord where I'm feeling like I can't say, hey, why don't you, with all politeness, go fuck off. I don't think I have to pull that out all that often because for the most part, everyone's super chill. I think I missed like one of the inciting incidents that was the kind of crux of one of Enash's arguments on the last episode. It was where somebody came on and then left because they were in a disagreement with we don't even like have formal mod roles, but we have a couple of majorly active community members like yourself. And so as such, you've been given Discord powers because you're doing more for that community than I am, or than the conspirators in general. So like, if the community is a garden, you're spending more time in it than we are. And it's like, well, I mean, hell, if you're here and you have the time and energy to do it, by all means, be great if you could help out. And so I missed the whole thing where this went down, but apparently someone came in and they were in an argument with somebody who was in one of these pseudo mod roles and like, I guess felt like they got pushed out kind of quickly. And that kind of bums me out. I don't want that to be the situation where somebody comes in and gets into a disagreement and it turns surprisingly hostile surprisingly quickly. And again, having not been there, I can't say how hostile it was.
I was going to say, that's not my impression of how it went down.
Okay, good. So you were there. Then you can correct all of my
I wasn't
I was there.
I was lurking. But
I missed it completely, so...
my take was that
take.
This person came in expressing a lot of ideas. I think David was kind of hostile to those ideas and made that clear. And he, the other party had switched to a different channel and was like, so David, just level with me. Do you not want me in this server? And he was like, honestly, I don't. I don't like you very much. And so he left. And I'm like... And I get really worried when that gets brought up as a thing we want to avoid because, I mean, there was the thing where he thought David was like an owner or like ran the server or something, so correcting that misconception is good. And now we have a welcome page that should make it clear what people's roles are. But the fact that like he left because David was honest with him about his feelings... Like, I am 100% on David's side in that one and would not want any kind of unwritten or written rules or anything that would discourage people from answering questions like that, honestly.
I am in the University of Bayes, which is the split-off server that they ended up making. It's a good server. It's just...
This is
again,
a different person who made the University of Bayes, right?
Or was that around that... Okay, maybe I'm...
yeah, because
but was that like around
Zorander is still
that
active in both
or...
communities.
Then
but yeah,
actually maybe I'm misunderstanding how that went down because I was under the impression that somebody was trying to add.
Yeah, that was Zorander wanted to add a mental health channel and talked about it for like 2 weeks. And we wouldn't add one because we're like, well, just start talking about mental health. And if lots of people talk about mental health, we'll add a channel for it. And he was like, no, add it now. Because that people won't feel comfortable talking about mental health if there's not a specific channel for it. And we're like, oh, but look, we don't. And also he was like kind of new. And I personally was uncomfortable with people coming in and being like, we need this channel. Let's make this channel. Because I'm like, oh, then we have a lot of channels and we'll just get endless channel clutter.
We have a lot of channels.
Yeah.
I think it worked out for the best that University of Bayes is its own thing because it is different. I mean, I don't know really if there's a unifying topic of Bayesian conspiracy as a whole, but like kind of the subjects that we talk about on the podcast and then the stuff that your guys' separate podcasts have brought up as well, Mind Killers, Methods of Rationality. So there's like kind of already built-in topics and a listener group that has a certain set of interests. And this was kind of, it turned out to be like, here's a place where I guess, we can talk about mental health and self-help and growth, and that's cool too. I just like it kind of being its own thing, because that way you can select for audiences.
Totally, and I on that one, so that was different than the other incident where somebody came on and got the impression that they were being told, like, that I don't want you here by somebody that they thought ran the place.
Oh, it was an authority figure.
Yeah, so this one was different. Like, I totally get the the inclination to not have someone jump in as a new person and say, hey, you know what we need is these new channels, and trying to, get that channel bloat going. I'm sympathetic to that. I was surprised at the pushback. And I didn't just jump in and do stuff just because I figured I'd let it sort itself out, and it did. And frankly, if I had just made a mental health channel, Xander may not have broken off and done the University of Bays, which is super awesome. They have, it seems like daily recorded lectures on various subjects, and
it's we can link to it. It's actually a really cool place. It's a different subject matter, but for people that are interested in, and I am in self-helpy, growthy, learning-y things.
Yeah, it's more of a coordinated effort to do a couple of things than it is just like a place to hang out. And I think I'm fine with the Bayesian Conspiracy Discord being just a place to hang out. So, like I said, the only part that I'm sympathetic to was the fact that a new person wanted to jump on and ask for new channels. That said, I was surprised at the pushback because, mental health is a topic that is oft discussed in the rationalist community, and that we have a lot of insight and practiced techniques for. And the idea
also,
of
if you look at the Slate Star Codex user polls, there's a lot of overlap between specific mental illnesses and the rationalist community, autism being one.
Exactly. So we're disproportionately represented in the mental health category, and so the idea that people didn't want that, I found surprising. And I'm sympathetic to the argument of well, I don't want to just start spewing stuff and clogging up the general chat, because then things get lost in general too.
Yeah.
Part of general wants to talk about last night's episode of whatever, and the other part is trying to talk about depression or something. Then it gets kind of clogged up and confused in there, and having a space for that, I think, made a lot of sense. But that seems like, I think that one mostly went down fine. It was mainly, I was just surprised at sort of the vitriol maybe of the intense pushback of I don't want this. I thought that was
I think that was
surprising,
mostly
it,
in response to the way that it was being requested.
Not what it was, but more the insistence.
Yeah.
So that they were talking about it for days. Yeah.
I only caught the tail end of it, so I wasn't there for the whole thing, so I can't really comment to the rest of the whole incident.
Yeah, I just lurk and skim. I don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, actually, Steven, when you were saying I didn't want to just jump in and make that channel because someone requested it, I feel like because I am quote unquote an authority figure, or as one of the co-hosts of the podcast, I almost don't want to touch the Discord. I'm worried about abusing power or being seen as I don't know. I get very uncomfortable if anyone ever kind of tries to treat me as an authority figure. I don't like attention. I don't like people looking at me as a role model, because no.
You've got to just relish in your power. I think I had and I like it being a fairly mod-free zone or moderation-free zone. I had one, this was probably 6 months ago. It was also just a bad week for me, and then there's something stupid kicked it off, and I had 1.5 hour of I think this is right around when I maybe I added it right after this, the old man yells at clouds emoji, and there were 4 meme channels, there were 5 other ones, and there were 2 not safe for work meme channels. And I was I know we have minors on this channel, on this Discord. This is fucking stupid. What the hell is this? It's I left for 2 days, and I come back and everything's all I'm I could just, using the garden analogy, I just came in after a weekend off, and I see a bunch of shit, and without even talking to people, I'd start ripping things up, and I didn't rampage too hard. I think I deleted 3 channels and then added one of them back or something.
Off my lawn.
Right. Yeah. Old man yells at clouds. Yeah. Get off my lawn. But this isn't my lawn. This is everybody's. And I think to bring it back more to the broad, how does one conduct oneself? I think we do it just about perfectly, or just about ideally for my tastes, which is all that really matters, because it's the community that, is for this show. I don't have a lot of patience, and luckily my patience is never tested on this in this Discord of oh my god, I just feel unsafe whenever this subject comes up, or I hate if somebody, I'm trying to think of whatever it is, we can insert whatever harsh topic. That's something that I really like about our community, is that there are many, I'm prepared to say basically all corners of the internet, or most, whatever, where oh no, that conversation's off the table. We don't talk about that here. Or
an example I've seen a lot in real life that I don't think is that controversial though. That might be. Well, so sometimes a vegan will come on and say, nobody post pictures of meat. I'm deeply offended by the idea of other people eating meat. I don't want to see meat. Don't talk about meat. And then depending on what your community is, how like top down uh, or like self policing strictness it is, either people will enforce that and be like, oh my god, you posted a thing about meat. You got to delete it immediately because Kevin is a vegetarian and will get very offended. Or Kevin, like,
Yeah.
you can go to
And
a vegan
and
farm.
Steven, this relates to
Like, you don't have
something
to be
that
here.
you said that I actually wanted to disagree with. You said that an entire community of people behaving like the perfect internet citizen sounded good. I think that sounds bad. I think that sounds boring.
It sounds very suppressive.
Because no one will be talking about anything interesting, because anything interesting could offend somebody. And I think it relates to what
You're
I think it
right.
relates to
I
what
think
Jace was
that-
just
that-
saying, where
that was the
if
last-
somebody comes in and says, "Hey guys, I am triggered by meat or discussions of meat or pictures of meat," then the perfect internet citizen is going to say, "Oh, well, of course we won't talk about that." And I don't think that's always the correct answer.
That
Yeah.
But people have triggers about everything. Yeah, so
yeah,
I've
that,
been
that's
on
a
the
perfect
hilarious
fair
And I
point.
think I was
Tumblrs where
part of
it's
that
like,
polyamory group that you were
there's
talking
a
about last episode.
entire essay.
Yeah.
Oh, I left that one.
Oh,
I'm
I was
actually
never
curious if you're still
active on
there
it
and
because I
if
was
you're
like,
still-
I can't.
Could share.
I can't do
No,
this. Yeah.
Oh, I never posted anything. I mean, I lurk anyway, but the thing was, yeah, like I was just about to talk about like certain Tumblrs that have this, but this community had that too. There's like an entire thesis statement that you have to read and like sign your name in blood in before you're allowed to join, and then they have to evaluate you and like, yeah, you're not allowed to use the word
Yep.
poly because Polynesians had it first, and that's racist.
Appropriation.
And you're not allowed to post pictures without describing the picture or emojis because some people might not have the ability to see
Yeah.
images on their phone, or they might be hearing impaired.
Yeah, just like last time you brought this up, I found myself getting angry just hearing about that. And I think I concede your point 100%, Wes, that with your model of the perfect internet citizen, that does sound terrible. I think and never tries and never offends anybody or makes an effort not to ever offend anybody was the last and on the list of like what makes the perfect internet citizen, and that's the only one I would draw a contention with. I think that you can have totally healthy and adult disagreements that are 100% capable of being discussed by adults who are capable of having conversations that might be challenging. And so I would, if we chop that off the list of the perfect internet citizen, I think I'd be totally on board with it. I'm picturing just more like, like a disagreement. I think I brought this up on the last one, Sam Harris and Dan Dennett disagreeing on free will. Like their disagreements barely got personal. It got surprisingly, rude from Dennett, which was surprising. But like that's the kind of discourse that I like, where oh, you think that? Well, I think that's wrong, and here's why. And of course, that's offensive to the person hearing it if they hear that you disagree. So you chop off the offensive bit, and I think the rest of the perfect internet citizen sounds close to good. Like the meat example, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know if I would do this personally. I would like to think that if someone jumped into general chat on the Bayesian Conspiracies Discord and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm new. Could we stop talking about meat here because it triggers me and I don't like it?" I kind of would like to think that we would have a handful of people respond with pictures of their of the last meal they made that was meat heavy, or with pictures of turkey legs.
I don't
or
think
whatever.
people would do that.
And don't get me wrong. I think that the vegan is on the right side of the argument. I happen to not be a vegan because I'm lazy and a hypocrite, but I think that's the ethical way to go. But to say I can't handle this, can you guys all accommodate me?
I think
don't have any
if
patience
somebody
for
came
that.
in and said that,
Like,
David would just comment and say no, and then the conversation would move on, and that would just kind of be the end of it.
I'd like to think that he'd do it while biting into like a piece of bacon or something and just like no.
Here's a live feed of me eating bacon.
Right. Because
That's my response. No,
that's what I would want to happen. I can't imagine trying to make this a safe, happy
which
place for
thing
everybody.
would you want to have happen? The people being jerks about it, or that like just David saying no.
I
I think I'm more in favor of David saying no in the conversation. Moving on.
Yeah.
I don't like. I think the other thing is actually people being dicks about it. I think if someone did come in and they said like, "Hey, I actually like am triggered by pictures of meat to the point that I have such empathy for animals that I'll have a panic attack." Like I have a friend who is like this. They are a VSP, probably a very sensitive person, which is a real psychiatric thing.
I think we have one or two of
People
those
have
on the
different levels of
Discord.
sensitivity that they're kind of born with. Yeah, probably. Would not be surprised. And the thing is that as that person, you can be self-aware of the fact that I'm triggered by this thing, and if this is going to be a regular thing here, I realize maybe this is not the place for me, or maybe I can use one of my like block features. Does Discord
Filters?
have, like, a block
I don't think
feature? I mean,
so.
not block, but
Sensor
I don't
feature
know.
or
I'm
something.
thinking about.
Well, and
That
so
would be a
I'm
good
sympathetic
feature
to
to have.
somebody's sensitivity there. I think
Yeah,
more it's
like I
just
wouldn't make fun of
that
them in
I
response.
think I think I think entering a room of 100 people and saying everyone stop talking about this, and I think it's totally okay. I agree that the polite and probably preferable way to do it would be to say no, we're gonna keep talking about that. You don't have to hang out though. I think that would be fine. Maybe just avoid the general chat or whatever if or the one food channel that we now have. Like if you can't handle meat, then just avoid those areas. That's something that I think makes our community different from others that I'm involved in, which is like I've never seen, and I'm not 100% up to date on everything that happens in ours, but I've never seen an example of somebody complain about how they can't handle whatever subject or whatever this is, and then stick around and keep being freaked out by it. If they really are freaked out by it, then
Yeah, no one's forcing you to be here.
that's my thing 100%. Like I've seen other communities where conversations go fucking wild, and somebody would be talking about the legit, to choose a politically charged example, or an emotionally charged example rather. The primary allegation of sexual misconduct against Joe Biden, discussing its legitimacy can, there's all kinds of worms involved in that can where, if we put this claim to doubt, then we might be doubting the rest of the legitimacy of most claims or this or that. If we point out that some of these seem like it's definitely possible that they're like to even admit the possibility of a manufactured assault claim, then suddenly you're this horrible rape apologist, and I'm going to make it my life's work on this Discord to sit here and fight you on it because I simply can't handle that talk. And it's like, if you can't handle it, then get the fuck out. I think that we have a great way just as a community, and this is probably rationalist, in the broader rationalist community, of A, having fewer of those things that quote I just can't handle, and B, of look, if you are in that group of people who can't handle something, then you are welcome to leave. And it doesn't mean that you have to leave the Discord, doesn't mean you have to leave the rationalist community. It just means that you don't hang out in the Mind Killer channel where we're discussing whether or not this sounds like bullshit. Like I even forget the name of the person, but it was like, oh yeah, when I was 14, Biden diddled me at the congressional dinner or something, and then it immediately came out. It's like, actually, he was in another state. He wasn't at that dinner, so that's impossible. And this is the kind of thing that would get me shat on in some communities too, just pointing out that Biden, the second he got the second he became the Democratic frontrunner, I predicted, I should have done this on the air, but it wasn't, it's not a very out there prediction. There are going to be tons of allegations of misconduct coming out against Joe Biden that have never happened, that have never surfaced in the past, because of the exact same machine that made shit up for Trump, right? This is going to, or not made shit up about him, but the same machine that got him elected. I am 100% convinced that we are going to see a ton of manufactured claims against Biden that otherwise would never have surfaced because there was not a political machine trying to discredit him before. Now, does that mean that he's a perfect dude? Hell no. He seems kind of weird. I've seen, we've all seen the videos. But I would bet $1,000 that in fact, I would have already won $1,000. This one claim seemed to have been made up. Then they said, oh, you know what? Maybe it was the year before. But it was definitely when, the thing is like, no, you said it was when this person was 14 years old. She wasn't 14 years old at the previous congressional dinner. So if you got the year wrong, you got her age wrong too. And so whether or not this particular case is true or not, my thing is like, I am willing to stake literal money that we can't really prove because you can't, falsify an allegation from 30 years ago. But like, there are going to be made up things about Biden simply because the global political machine wants to reelect Trump, right? The global one being like the Russian bots and all that bullshit.
And there's
is this mind killer
well,
territory?
there was
or
I think we did.
Well,
bring
this
it
is
up
our
on
mind
the
killer guest episode.
But there is I mean, what you're talking about, there was like these clowns did get caught trying to pay some woman to say she was sexually assaulted by Robert Mueller. So like that's definitely happening.
Yes, thank you.
And
That
those
was another
people are
great
out there
example.
trying to make up false claims to own the libs. But like I feel like the point you were making about this was that it's something that we're able to discuss on the Discord without it flying off in wild directions. And I completely agree. I think there's I think 2 places on the internet that I would be comfortable talking about that, and the Bayesian conspiracy Discord is one of them, and the other one is like a Facebook group that I created specifically to talk about stuff that will get you yelled at. Yeah.
And when you've made your own walled-in area, then it's easy enough to curtail it as you want. And that's the kind of place I want the Bayesian Discord server to be. Not a place where we all sit around questioning, sexual assault allegations, but places where we are comfortable, like, actually having conversations. And
yeah, that's Gina.
Sorry,
she just came in and gave
distraction.
me peas.
I'm jealous.
Dana. Oh my god, that's so many peas.
They're from the farmer's market. Oh my god, I got so many more than that from my garden. It's insane. Anyway,
That's still pretty sweet.
Steven, what were you talking about?
That's awesome.
It's
Well,
like a
thank you
yard.
for bringing me home on the point I was trying to make, because I got kind of carried away with it. But yes, I mean, so that's what I want the community to be, where, hey, is this a legit thing? And, the response isn't, oh my God, you terrible person for asking that question.
How dare you question? Yeah.
Whatever question it is, I mean, I'm trying to think of something that isn't so, horrible as an assault allegation, but, I'm trying to think, other things. We've got a COVID channel that I think there's a lot of value in talking about, because there's a lot of
Well, I
misinformation.
think it's
floating around about
you'd be
that.
able to talk about on the server. You wouldn't be able to talk about in other places. The question of like, what are these? The George Floyd protests worth it in terms of COVID infection? Like what's the cost benefit there?
Yeah, and I mean,
What's the game theory?
whichever way you come down on that question, the person who asks it isn't going to be crucified, and that's what I like, is that this is a community where people are capable of bringing up things that are politically salient or emotionally salient, and everyone can have a conversation about it. I wouldn't want it any other way. I think that.
I think it really. You weren't finished.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think that the only. Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say. I think this comes back to the essay about politics being the mind killer, in the sense that my last experience on a non-rationalist Discord was somebody mentioning, lol, that reminds me of this Slate Star Codex post, and then suddenly everyone just dogpiling and people getting kicked out, accused of sea lioning, and it's just, you see these kinds of reactions when somebody does out-group signal, and then, oh no, we gotta reinforce the in-group, like, hive mind. And regardless of what people's political opinions are, because, like, yeah, rationality doesn't have really a political leaning. Like, I think we're more libertarian than average, based on, again, the Slate Star Codex community polls, which might be selecting for a slightly different audience anyway, but other than that, I mean, there was quite a spread, if I recall.
Yeah,
Wasn't it almost even?
No, David's
between
converted
red
everyone
and
on the
blue?
Discord to anarcho-capitalism now.
I'm talking about Slate Star Codex. Although that would be fun. Oh, we could do our own polls.
Yeah, we could do polls. I mean, the cool thing is that, like, it doesn't really matter, because if we're left leaning or right leaning or upside down leaning, people are capable of entertaining the other person's position and engaging with it in a real way. I still don't quite get like what exactly is happening in the failure mode where people just freak out and are incapable of
What?
having a
Yes,
conversation.
well,
Like
It's
uncharitably.
the mind killer. Their
politics
mind
is the
dead.
mind killer, and arguments are
Their mind has been
soldiers.
killed
So you must
at that
support
point.
all arguments on your side. And if you don't, it's like you're shooting your own soldiers in the back.
Yeah, but I mean, so we've all heard that. It doesn't like.
You haven't had
I
a
don't-
personal experience like that?
Well, I'd also just wonder. I don't know if is it as simple as the fact that we've all read the mind killer sequence, or many of us have, that makes
No.
us capable
Oh,
of,
no,
of
it's 'cause
doing
we're all
this. I don't think that
contrarians.
that's it. I think it takes more.
was like-
So if somebody says
Yeah,
something,
I-
we immediately are like, "How is that wrong?"
Maybe.
What's the other side of this?
Now, I remember having read the sequences like a few years before I was in an argument with a coworker where I was like noticing myself doing bad arguments. I guess like it did seep into my consciousness enough where I was hanging out in the rationalist online community and then hanging out in social justice communities, and that was kind of before social justice turned into what it is now. But it was around, I can never remember her name, but the woman who like got
Rachel
self-tanned
Dolezal.
and textured her hair and then was that's it. How do you forget a name?
I don't
like,
know,
is
I only
it
ever saw it
Dolezal
written.
or Dolezal? Anyway, there was some coworker that I was arguing with, and I just noticed myself wishing that I was like, oh man, I wish that I could like go on my social justice website so I could find what the correct arguments are. And then I was like, wait a minute. But like, yeah, I remember having sacred cows, and then it was a really painful process getting rid of them, killing them. I guess kill your sacred cows. Is that the phrase?
This is still an open offer for people to find my sacred cows so I can try and drag them out for slaughter. I think part of my problem is I just don't care about enough stuff heavily enough to have them. But like if someone's like, Steven, you're obviously super attached to this. There are things I care about and I'm passionate about. And I'm prepared to argue about, but I don't think that I have anything on like the sacred cow pedestal. Of course, no one does until they're pointed out. That's why it's an open invitation all the
Yeah.
time for people to find them for
I was
me.
gonna say, I think it's an incredibly human thing to have those, but yeah, we can. I don't know.
No, I mean, just if this is open invitation to you guys and to the listeners, if anyone on the Discord is like, Steven, you seem sacred cowy about this, I'd be interested in talking about it.
You know what? I can't think of anything, which is hilarious.
Steven, you're just too chill.
I
think-
remember trying to. What?
Yeah, that's my thing. I'm too, and then of course, how am I going to argue that I'm not right? I think I'd be like, yeah, you're right. Actually, that is something that came up actually in my company Slack. We were talking about, I forget how it came up. Someone was talking about how they were stressed out about something, and since I don't want to use the word not give a fuck, I said give a hoot, and I was like, I ran out of hoots to give in like 2015, and they were like, yeah, but then the downside of that is that you don't have like a response like emotionally to like whatever thing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not a perfect solution. It's not even a solution that I chose. I ran out of them, and so this isn't like a sacred cow thing, but it's just a funny way of how I interact with stuff. It's like I really just like for most things just don't care. If I do care, and this is where it becomes a problem. It's like too distant for me to connect with emotionally. But this is more further abroad than what we were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah, and we've also been going for an hour and 40.
Yeah,
We
I mean
should
we
probably
can
start to wrap up.
yeah,
loose
just
ends.
about. I felt like there was more ground to cover here that I'm going to regret not getting to, but you know what?
Well,
That's
we
why we
talked
come back
about
in a
the
couple
niceness.
weeks.
We talked about the police. Was there? I think we were going to talk about rationalist life hacks or whatever, but we could save that.
Yeah, well,
Honestly, there's individual topics that I wanted to do whole episodes on, like career hacks, for example.
yeah, that sounds valuable, and the kind of thing that we won't be able to shove in the last 10 minutes here. There was a thing, and I think this is what Enosh was talking about because he sent us some notes since he couldn't make it today. It was a comment on one of the Discord norms that tone matters because someone's tone is a signal of how willing they are to engage or to respond to arguments. And so this was something that I wasn't very helpful in. I think it might have been in the We Want More channel where I forget who it was. I'm sorry, but they were bracketing their like statements in brackets of like sincere question, confusion, etc. And I responded with like, question, why are you putting those things there? And they're like, well, because it indicates like where I'm coming from. And I'm like, I could tell it was a question from the question mark in the sentence. And yet I do think there's value in doing that, but I wonder, like, I think that would only be necessary to an audience that is completely tone deaf. And it's not like
As an autistic person, I appreciate that sort of thing, and also I don't expect people to norm it.
well, I think for me, like, if somebody isn't coming to the conversation with a mentality of like I'm willing to engage this or something, like no one's going to use the bracket sacred cow and then say something, or like I will yell at you if you disagree with me and then make their statement. So like I feel like they're almost in our small community.
Just gonna bracket my comment. Totally unreasonable.
But I'm curious.
No, the idea of them was they were supposed to be like the Elcor from Mass Effect, who don't have any way, who kind of speak in a monotone, so they don't have any way of expressing emotion. So they're supposed to be emotional. They were supposed to be like happy or like confused, or you could put something like good-natured joke or something like that. So I think they have value there. They're definitely not something you could norm because it makes the conversation way too burdensome. You have to type like twice as much. I said we should use emojis for that, and everyone was like, no, but emojis could be misinterpreted. I'm like, yeah, but they're way easier.
I also use my emoji shortcuts heavily. I would be willing to stake without counting that more than 2/3 of my comments on Discord have an emoji attached to them.
And
because
Inyash brought up last episode the idea that there was the Slate Star Code Expo's friendship is counter signaling, where some people will just like make fun of each other and tease each other as a way of expressing affection. And emojis are very helpful with that. You call someone an asshole, but put a heart at the end of it. You can tell what they're saying.
And I did that with somebody. I didn't use the word asshole, but they had said I think I'm being uncharitable to this piece of media, and I said I pulled out the quote and I said, being uncharitable to this piece of media, isn't that on brand for you? Oh, here's something that we can talk about that's mind killer that I just noticed. Oh wait, no, yours is different. Sorry, you've got the no snitch tattoo.
Correct.
And from Methods of Rationality.
It's such a good tattoo.
I thought this was related because I saw I'm not on Twitter, thank God. Well, really, thank me for the foresight of knowing that that's not good for me. Or Facebook, by the way. I saw a Facebook post, because I have an account, but I haven't opened it since we closed, the lesser on meetups, because that was the only reason I got on for 5 minutes a month was to set up the monthly meetup. But someone showed me a thread on a friend's account that went fucking hog wild with people like this. This is exactly what I don't want it to turn into. They had posted the response from like J.K. Rowling about their perceived transphobia, and let's be fair, probably partially legitimate claims of, look, I feel like you're not being fully woke on this, J.K. Rowling, what the hell? And so she apparently wrote some apology that I didn't read in all of its essence because I don't really care. And the comments in there, those went like, I think within 5 or 6 posts went straight to Nazis and all that bullshit. So anyway, the reason I brought that up with your snitch tattoo was I saw somewhere on Reddit, apparently some tattoo artists are willing to like over whatever you call it, over tattoo Harry Potter tattoos for free. Because now people don't like the Harry Potter tattoos because
just get a big
20
red
years ago
X
when these
through
books
it,
came
I
out.
could get
so
a
you can
free
be cool like
tattoo.
me.
Like,
That's right.
just don't get a
Yeah,
Nazi
don't do that.
tattoo with a big red X through it. That was a reference to the person that got stabbed.
Yeah, in Washington during the wasn't he
They
campaigning
were
for
like,
Bernie?
oh, a Nazi. Let's go
Yeah.
punch him.
Yeah, he had like a no Nazis tattoo, and they're like, I think like what was it? Like his wearing short sleeves and his shirt partially covered, or they just
I
missaw
don't
and they were
remember.
just no, they stabbed him, right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm a big fan of not being violent towards people you disagree with, because sometimes people you disagree with aren't people. Sometimes people you are violent towards aren't people you actually disagree with, and more importantly,
Yeah.
and more generally, and this is the kind of thing that again, this community fosters, like, and the kind of question that if I were to raise in other places would just get you screamed at and called a Nazi, like. It's unlikely that I'm right about everything, right? And so it's unlikely that I'm wrong about my stance on Nazis or something. but to not be willing to entertain disagreement, I think is just like a failure mode of a community that is at all trying to quote be less wrong. If it's a Discord about movies or something, then whatever. Leave your politics out of it. Let's talk about how weird Colors from the Sky was. Um, that Nick Cage movie. Oh, was that before we started recording? I watched a movie last night called Colors from the Sky. It came out in 2019 with Nicolas Cage. It's based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, and I don't think I've seen a Lovecraft movie. The closest I've come to Lovecraft is playing Bloodborne, and this movie is fucking weird. It wasn't wholly unpleasant because it was so unique, but it was a strange movie. And so if anyone wants a weird hour and 50 minutes, check this movie out.
I love surreal shit. That sounds like... Well, first of all, Nick Cage is in it.
That was the main attractor. I heard the category was like sci-fi horror, and it had Nick Cage in it, and I'm like, sold. I don't need to know anything else.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we have much else to go on about. Do you guys have anything else to
No, I think I'm
that you
good.
wanted to discuss?
Yes, but, like, not on topic. And, yeah, we should wrap up.
All right.
Sequence posts, I think maybe we should just save for next time. And,
Yeah.
And all that.
Well, that sounds good. And Inyash, sorry for probably butchering the conversation that you wanted to make here by trying to summarize your points for you. So we will no doubt touch on, I think having community-related conversation, throughout everything sounds like super relevant because this is a small community that we try to foster and keep things running awesomely. So, yeah, I see us coming back to these points anyways. So there'll be room for you
Definitely.
to make your case better. I don't know if we have time. We might have a minute. I'm curious. Was there anything else I said, Wes, that you drew contention with? Because I'd be happy to clear up anything that you maybe
so
disagreed on. Or maybe didn't.
one of the things that both of you had said, no,
Wait, both
Steven and
being
you.
Steven and Dinesh?
was
or
that you didn't
Steven
like
and
the
me?
idea that people should have thicker skin.
Okay.
And I feel like I do like that idea. I think what we were talking about earlier is recognizing that like some people get offended by things easily and not every community is for them. So it's not like, you should go get thicker skin, but it's like your skin must be, this thick to have fun in this community. And I
Must be this thick to
support the
ride.
idea of there being separate
Okay.
spaces for different skin thickness, and not every space needs to accommodate the most fragile person.
I think I agree there. I think the distinction that I had was like, and I can't remember exactly what the context was that brought this up.
It was, I
Like-
think, somebody saying, like, grow a thicker
No,
skin.
I think what
Actually,
Eneasz
I think it
said was
Eneasz.
it was when one of the
Well,
people
I think-
had left the server. He was
Or
like,
was
well,
quoting someone.
I think in some sense I'm sad they left, but in the other sense, like maybe they need to have a thicker skin to have a good time here, something like that.
I think it's a skin thickness, again, maybe tabooing that word to make it easier. What I meant was more like this shouldn't be the kind of place where like you should expect to get, that you need a jumping in sort of ceremony, like being jumped into a gang. I wanted this
that
to
might be fun.
But if you are the kind of person who can't come in and have an opinion challenged, then yeah, frankly, this isn't the space for you. Like, it needs to be possible that you're wrong and need to be willing to entertain that idea seriously. And if you find that too emotionally painful, this just isn't the space for you. I'm on board with that. Maybe I'm walking back on everything I said too easily. Maybe I just didn't phrase it clearly enough the first time. But what's your take, Jace?
Yeah, I like, let's see, talking about Tumblr earlier and the community norm of like SJW spaces having these essays that you have to sign in blood and so forth. I swear to God, this
No,
is a
I know
thing.
what you're talking about.
Maybe not the blood, but yeah, I think people have probably seen these. I saw like a counter movement that was around for a bit until basically I think Yahoo bought Tumblr, and then all other things went to shit, and they started just banning people for no reason. Before that happened, though, there was kind of a counter movement where people were explicitly stating in their blog, "This is not a safe space. I do not tag triggers. This is my blog, and I am going to run it the way I see fit. And you have the choice to leave or to block me if I offend you. And then they were still getting people that were like, excuse me, this is a fat phobic comment, and I take this, like, I take offense to this, or, this seems really ableist. You can't say stupid because that, denigrates people with low IQ. And the person will have to just kind of point to the top of their blog and be like, sorry, I'm not your safe space. There are other places that are your safe space that you can go hang out in.
Yeah, that's
there
the
are other
vibe.
blogs that are perfectly willing to, like, be told what triggers they need to tag by their viewers. This is not one of those places. I just don't have the emotional bandwidth to do this. I'm not being paid to run this blog, etc., etc. And I think it's my very long-winded way of saying I think I agree. After kind of having,
I think,
like I said, picked a position, like stuck my
I think
stick in
there's
the
also
sand,
a big
and
difference
then, like,
between
let
saying,
people respond to
this
it.
isn't your safe space. We're not giving trigger warnings. We're not necessarily using all the current, social justice approved wording for everything, and being like, we're going to express bigotry on this in this piece, So like, if somebody,
Yeah. Yeah, I like the don't be a dick as a general rule.
Yeah, that's the I think actually my wife got the mug from somewhere, and it's just perfect because "don't be a dick" is a phrase I like a lot. I saw Phil Plait give his talk at one of the James Randi Amazing Meetings in like 2011 or 12.
I remember
And
that.
the title of the talk was "Don't be a dick," and it was surprisingly controversial for some reason. And I
But
think
what about
because
my free speech?
well, I think skeptics also enjoy the fight of like, no, you're being a fucking idiot. And what they don't realize, and that's the point he was making, was like that's not how you win hearts and minds. So like if you want this message to spread, you don't do it by getting in someone's face and calling them an idiot. And anyone who wants to can find
the
that
"don't be a dick"
talk on YouTube, I think
phrase
it was
makes
30
me
minutes.
nervous for something you guys mentioned in the last episode, which is that if the norm is "don't be a dick," then the word dick becomes defined as whatever somebody doesn't like. In the same way that we can be violent
It's
toward
a slippery
Nazis,
slope.
ended up with everyone being Nazis. Saying "don't be a dick" just winds up with everyone being a dick that you don't like.
Yeah, but I think that when I said a general rule, maybe what I meant was more of like the guidelines, where like being a dick is not going to be a bannable offense. It's just if somebody posts a picture of meat in response to the person saying like, hey, I don't like meat, instead of just saying like, no, we don't do that here, they're just spamming pictures of bacon or whatever, then like I think that the community can kind of
Yeah, I
be
could
like,
say-
hey, you're being kind of a dick.
Yeah, I
And
would
also
say
you-
like
no,
don't
sorry, we're not gonna
intentionally
do that.
cause people distress.
Yeah, that's what I mean by it, I guess.
Yeah, and that sounds close. I mean, the other cool thing about, worrying about sliding to the bottom of a slippery slope is like I feel like our community is capable of not doing that. And so, when I say don't be a dick, it means like if someone says something that is wrong, like if David was on and I said
Like
something
factually
about
wrong.
exactly, or at least very likely to be wrong, because David's knowledgeable about a lot of things that I have no fucking clue in. So I'll come in and say something and he'd be like, actually, that's 100% wrong, and here's why. That's not being a dick. If he said,
See, but
"You're
that
a fucking
distinction,
idiot,"
I think, is
that's
not
being a dick.
conveyed when you just say "don't be a dick," because in a lot of places, saying "well, that's 100% wrong,"
You're right.
that is being a dick.
Yeah, and luckily, I think that we have the shared norm of like we all want to be less wrong, trademark. That like so if someone says that to me, I'm not offended. I'm not even actually the least bit like put on my my back step. I'm like, oh really? Like
Wow, sounds
I-
like you have
please
adequately
help me
thick
figure this
skin.
out. And I think I'm trying to
God, I keep
find.
wanting to make transgender jokes about this because
Oh my God,
literally
really?
one of the effects of testosterone is your skin thickens.
I did not
Yeah,
know
and the
that.
opposite on estrogen. Yeah, there's a gender or sexually dimorphic skin thickness thing.
And like I think
It's
that's
totally irrelevant to the conversation, but I keep kind of giggling about it in the back of
Oh
my
no!
head. So
oh
I
no!
just
Now,
felt the
now,
need to
now, I'm probably
blurt
gonna
it
look
out
this
there
up and
as
discover.
I
no, it's
do.
hilarious.
The metaphor skin thickness is actually a super sexist thing. like
no, don't tell the
that's where that
SJWs.
came from. So I'm sure
I think
it'll be ruined forever.
for me, it's I'm trying to put myself in the place in my memory where I was when I talked about skin thickness. And I can't remember what it was. I think having explained what we're both talking about, I think we agree, which is kind of exactly where I expected this conversation to end up. I think that that's going to be the case with with probably 85% of disagreements on the Discord about this sort of thing. I think there'll be more agreement than disagreement when any confusions are resolved, and I think that's where this kind of wound up. So
I think often, and generally, in life, when people disagree about something, it turns out to be the case that they're just misunderstanding each other, or like not like maybe 100%, but I think people can find common ground like way more often than they seem to think they can about even very like politically charged or emotionally charged topics. You
Well,
know,
I mean,
like
and it
I
depends on
used to,
community norm too. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like the you wouldn't have the room to even find where the disagreement lies in that dystopian server you were talking about, right? Because by
yeah,
then
I
you've
was
been
even gonna
screamed down
say
by the
though,
mob.
I used to be like social justice aligned, and oh, I was gonna actually use an abortion example, but I have an even more relevant one. Other David, and I, just the other day, were just randomly talking about shit, and we got on the topic of pickup artists, and me of 5 years ago or however long ago wouldn't have even like I would have been like, no, pickup artists are bad and evil, and they should all die, or probably nothing that extreme. But like, I was able to now have a conversation of, God, there's a lot of like bad shit in the pickup community, and it's pretty toxic. And yet, also, there's areas of the pickup community that are kind of just like sneakily teaching people social skills and self confidence. And like, actually, a lot of people seem to come out of the pickup community like better than they started, depending on where they are, like who they talk to, what lessons they take, what their goals are. Not a position that I would have been willing to even consider 5 or 6 or however many years ago.
Well, and that's the cool thing about different, societal and community norms is that you're more primed now than you were before to entertain an
Pick
argument
up.
that
I see what you
otherwise you
did
might
there.
not even be willing to pick up, right?
Yeah.
But oh man, I'll pretend that was on purpose. I am happy that I managed to drag on the conversation for another 20 minutes, but I am mindful that everyone has schedules, so thanks for letting me keep this going for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I need to eat food. I have not eaten any food yet.
It's just too late in the day for that to be the case. So let's resolve that, and we can call it a day here. Yeah, we will save the sorry, what was I saying? I'm trying to
Case
open
in
up
point.
my notes tab here. There it is. We'll save the sequences for next episode, but we never don't have time to thank our patron. So thank you for this week. Our patron that we are giving a special shout out today is Luke Hanks, who is a financial supporter of the podcast, which we really appreciate.
What a good name, Luke Hanks.
Sounds like Tom Hanks, so I know that Luke
Yeah, it
Hanks
does. And Luke
is a good
Skywalker.
dude,
It's just a good name.
right?
And a good person.
Exactly. So thanks for your support. You can find us on Patreon should you have the bandwidth to support us, and if you don't, that is totally fine, especially during the financial hardships that the world is going through. This should be one of the first things you cut, and not to feel bad about cutting it. So, but if you have spare cash around and you want to throw us a buck or two, we're super on board with that. And
Yeah, and there's all the other things you can do.
Yep, reviews
Which
on
I think I
iTunes
just
are
cut
free.
you off and you're about to say.
No, you're good. Because reviews on iTunes are free and take only a second. All that stuff. Everyone knows how to podcast and what to do to spread
And come
things
join
that
the
you like, so
Discord.
I won't talk you guys' ear off with it. I think we can wrap this up here. Oh yeah, then someone asked once. I think we got someone to write in. How do I join the Discord? There's a link to the Discord in every episode's show notes. So if you want to know what we're talking about and what makes our community super awesome, and that sounded sarcastic, but it wasn't. If I had emojis, you would have seen that. Then do come by and see what all the hubbub is about. And the link for that is in the show notes for the episode description.
Indeed.
And Wes, don't forget, also co-hosts the Mind Killers. So
No,
check that
I think
show
that
out.
was it. Come listen to the Mind Killer. We talk about politics and get mind killed.
It's surprisingly tame for what I was hoping for with that name, but maybe I'm just predisposed to not be too freaked out by it. So
Yes.
Did
I'm
you
curious what
guys,
other people's thoughts would be.
The one I
Do you
made
guys
was like
have a
clip
logo?
art.
That's let's talk about that. I just have all these like images of, like the people that they put on bathroom stalls, the generic person. But like, you know what? I'm starting to tank.
No worries. We'll call it here. And thanks for listening.
I have a mental image. Yeah. We love you guys. Stay healthy. Try to not get maced. Unless you're trying to, for political reasons.
And then if you do get maced for political reasons on purpose, try not to cough on anybody or get coughed on.
Yes.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Have fun. We'll see you next fortnight. Thanks again.
Okay, bye-bye.